going on, folks? I'm Matt. This is Photosynthetic. Welcome to another episode of the Hash Files. Now, it's been a minute since we've done one of these, but recently reconnected with our guest here today. Goes by the name Pedro. You may know him as Pedro's Girl, or even now it's Mr. Rosin's Neighborhood out there on Instagram. Love it, dude. How you doing, man?
I am doing well, man. Staying busy as possible and as always. And just enjoying life, brother. Just enjoying life. How about yourself?
Awesome, yeah. Oh, pretty much the same, man. Pretty much the same. I haven't done as many of these videos as I have done in the past, but I'm kind of getting back on the horse. And like I say, this just recently we found you on Instagram. There, gave us a chance to reconnect. Thought I'd reach out and have another conversation. If you guys aren't familiar, I'll pop a link up there to our very first conversation. That was a good couple of years ago, back when I was doing the Meet the Grower thing. But well, this is a show about hash. I love hash. I know you love hash, Pedro.
I love hash.
Oh, so good, man.
I
So
love hash.
yeah, you guys might have seen Pedro on some of that Build a Soil videos too. Him and Jerry sat down. You ran through a whole process of doing some awesome stuff. Very cool. Pop a link up for that as well. But I wanted to get into a variety of topics. I got a list here in no particular order. I just want to start throwing some questions out to you, kind of getting your opinion, getting your thoughts, getting your feelings on this stuff.
Yeah,
So
we'll see what I can answer and what I can, I suppose, but we'll go from
yeah,
there,
let's dig into it. So
right?
dry sifting. What are your thoughts on dry sifting?
Um, so I mean, I got to start out real quick in that I host a podcast on Friday nights. One of the hosts in the podcast, variables, and most everything that we're going to talk about involves a plethora of variables. So the first variable that I think about when I think of dry sift is what is the status of the material that we're dry sifting?
Yes.
Is it extremely dry and crunchy? Is it properly dried and cured, as in ready for dry sifting? Is it fresh, where we're going to run into a nightmare? So that's the first thing I think about. The second thing I think about, actually, maybe the first thing kind of tied to that, is debris.
Yes.
Is plant material. Which is going to be huge, which is probably going to lead into the next thing that I don't have a lot of experience in, and that I did see in your notes, which was static tech. And I don't have a lot of personal experience with static tech, probably because, and I mean, this isn't any dig on anybody, but probably because I make clean hash. Static tech is something where and it's not to say where you have to use just where you have dirty hash necessarily, but it is definitely a cleaning up of dirty hash. It's cleaning out the impurities, the plant material in the hash that shouldn't be there. It is generally done for purposes of like melt.
Yep.
So we're going to have a melt of a hash rather than pressing it into rosin. Or you're going to have people that are doing that for competition reasons, or for an ultra premium product where you're going to be paying, upwards of $120 a gram.
Yeah, because
So
I mean that's the thing. It is such a clean product when done properly, especially with that static tech coming in. If you're new to this concept, you're not aware. Dry sifting takes material that's generally fairly quite dry. You're running it through a set of screens, and then you're using a bunch of different either charged or non-charged gloves, brushes, that sort of thing to remove and clean up the product. And you can get some tremendously clean stuff. I'm going to throw a link down to a buddy's Instagram there. It goes by the name of Hash Rookie. You may be familiar with Pedro, but anyway, he does some amazing static tech work and has been teaching a bunch of people about it. But have you seen some of these machines that they're using too, with like the charge plates to separate stuff?
yeah, I have, where they're starting to drop the material through the charged plates and play with it there. I have. And it's kind of a step in the right direction, I suppose, because the third thing that I think of with dry sifting with static tech is how the hell do you do it on a commercial scale? Like it's it's
Bingo.
just it's just not possible right now to do it on a commercial scale. But now we're starting to run into these machines where they're tumblers, and then you can take material and directly, like you said, drop it between two plates and clean up the material that way. Um, so it's becoming more viable of a possibility for clean material, but I still just worry that, I mean, we're already at a point where people are kind of I don't want to say complaining, but complaining about the price of concentrates,
Fair.
and they keep wanting cleaner and cleaner and cleaner. Well, and cleaner and cleaner and cleaner just means more and more and more labor, or more and more and more um intricate following of SOPs, takes a lot
Well,
more love for the work for
as we
sure.
get into the talk about the cleaner flow and the SOP, are we thinking what's going to make the cleaner product? Are you going paddle? Are you going machine? We talk about industrial machines, but what are your
Man,
thoughts initially on the paddle versus the machine?
variables. All right, you want to specifically know the paddle bit versus a machine?
Yeah, let's talk.
Negligible. Negligible. All you have to do is agitate your material.
Yeah.
Now, when I say negligible, I say proper use of a paddle and proper use of a machine. Of course, you can get in there with a paddle and try to fucking paddle down the Mississippi River, and you're not going to do the material any good. You know what I'm saying? Or you can get into the washing machine, you can crank that son of a bitch up to, max and max it out, or any plethora of different variables and ruin material. So um, so yeah, I don't think that there's any big deal when used correctly. I will say when using a paddle, man, you're gonna get tired, you know.
Yeah.
It's
50
definitely
minutes
not
of
an
just
easy. Yeah, I mean,
mixing,
because I
mixing.
mean, you're talking about mixing it up for quite a few minutes at a time, and then
Yeah.
if you're talking about doing three, four, five, six, seven pulls, depending on what you're doing, it's a lot of freaking work. I mean, it ends up turning into a 5, 6, 7 hour project. Even done on a commercial scale, it can be upwards of 6 hours. Um,
Well, 100%. So, I mean, then we're seeing the rise of, getting talk about scale and industrial, these commercial machines. I mean, shout out to the low temp guys. They got the Osprey, they got the mini Osprey. What are your thoughts on that? Are they beating up the material? Are they doing a good job?
we use the Osprey at work up at Eden. I guess I say at work, but up at Eden, it's a facility that I work for up in Parachute, Colorado, doing organic gardening and solventless processing all the way through. So we use the Osprey up there, and I personally just purchased and should have sometime next week the mini Osprey
Oh, jealous.
and the stainless steel recirculation system. So I'm pretty excited to get that in. Your second, I want to adjust this just a little bit. Your second question was what I feel as far as like beating up the material and everything. If you know what you're doing, it's not. You're not doing that. And when I say you know what you're doing, I mean you got to know what your starting material needs to be. You need to know your RPMs. You need to know the proper water level. You need to know how much material to put in the machine. There's a lot of different variables. And then it starts to become a question that I've heard and even been, I don't want to say chastised, but a little over in that the Osprey is um, dual direction. So it spins,
Goes one way, takes it out
clockwise,
the
and
other.
then
Yeah,
it
yeah.
spins counterclockwise. Whereas the Osprey Junior or the mini Osprey is omnidirectional, I guess is what they call it. It only spins in one direction. And that's starting to become a question in the community. And I think that the only reason it's really starting to become a question in the community is because it's companies fighting between each other in the market, fighting for, market share, of course.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
They get the Whistler Tech guys too. Yeah.
yeah, they start talking about top end agitation, and they start talking about bottom end agitation, and whether or not doing the bottom end agitation is actually hurting the material, hurting the hash as you're processing it, you know. And I just don't believe that that's an issue at all.
Yeah. So then ice. I mean, you're putting a bunch of butter in there, you're getting rehydrated, and then you dump a bunch of ice in. How much ice do you like to use? What are your thoughts overall and just, not making too much of a mess of your product with too much ice?
Iceless as much as possible.
Yeah.
Iceless as much as possible. And again, there's many variables there because are you using a cold room? Are you Are you using cold water? What is the temperature of your water? Are you using frozen material? Are you using dried material? There's a lot of variables there. Um, but yeah, and we can talk on those for fucking hours, or somebody can get in touch with me for a consultation if they want to, and we can talk all day long about that. But essentially trying to get the water down to as close to or below freezing while you're washing as possible without using ice.
Yep.
That is, to me, absolutely important. Essentially, all you're going to be doing with the ice is beating up the material, adding unnecessary agitation, and yeah, as far as I'm concerned, you're going to add plant material to your final product and going to then have to try to clean it out later.
So I'm in Southern California. I can only get so cold. Do you have any tips, tricks, things that somebody might be able to do to at least get a little bit better, a little bit more into that acceptable zone?
If I First of all, I right away want to go into a consultation and be, why are you having a problem getting so cold? What's your issues? What are your conditions? What's your room? What's your air conditioning unit? Do you have a cool bot? That's probably the most important thing is having the cool bot. So obviously you need a cold room. You need a very insulated room, sealed as much as possible. You need an air conditioner to be large enough for that room. 12, 14, 15,000 BTUs is usually about where I like to be. And then you need a cool bot. The cool bot essentially, in layman's terms, fools your air conditioner into thinking the room is colder or is warmer than it actually is. So to then keep the air conditioner running to where, I mean, I've had my washroom down to 32, 33 degrees before.
Yeah, so I want to touch on something with the Coolbot there, because this is sort of a key thing that I don't know a lot of people may know about. Is not only does it help fake out your AC into thinking that the room is a lot warmer than it is, but it also has a feature where it doesn't let the thing start to ice up. Because if you're running that AC unit too hard, you're getting your coils, are going to cool down, they're going to start icing up, you're going to wreck your air conditioner. There's hacks out there too for Coolbots. I don't know if you've ever seen those.
I haven't, and I think I probably have one of the older units. I've been using them for freaking years. And I have never had one go bad. So that's speaks to their longevity.
Right.
But I have had my air conditioner freeze up. And I just turn it off for a while. If your air
Yeah.
conditioner's freezing up, your fucking room's cold enough, you know?
Fair statement. Fair statement.
So yeah, I mean, I just essentially just turn it off, turn the vent on, and usually within 5 minutes, the ice is gone. So
Yeah. So let me ask a question a different way then. What are we shooting for minimal acceptable temperatures for washing in? 10 degrees Fahrenheit, 12 degrees, 6. What do you think is sort of the minimum to get to? I
again,
guess maximum.
yeah, right. Again, variables. What material we're using. Are we using fresh frozen? Are we using dried material? Um, but I would say for the most part, for for washing to get it as iceless, to use iceless washing as you're going to just be as cold as possible, as
Yeah,
absolutely cold as you can, for the washing part of it. Now, pressing is a whole different story,
absolutely.
because there you can be too cold when pressing, and it comes down to the consistency of the rosin at that point in time to determine the room temperature. But I would say when washing, 32 degrees.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm lucky because up here in Canada, I can just go up my back deck and it's pretty cold throughout most of the winter.
Yep.
So
Yeah, the only thing I got to worry about with doing things outside, and I mean, believe me, I've washed in my goddamn bathroom before, so I mean, we got to do what we got to do, right? The
yeah,
only thing I worry about with washing outside is just debris, contaminants.
absolutely. Yeah, and that's I mean that's the name of the game when we're making hash, to keep our material as clean as possible.
Hmm.
So let's kind of shift a little bit to handling material. Fresh, frozen, dry. I mean, we're talking variables.
Yeah.
If you can, what is the optimum way to get your material from the plant to the washing machine?
I mean, again, there's a lot of variables, but is essentially as gently as possible.
Yeah.
If you're going to go fresh frozen, then I mean, if you can cut it off the plant and walk it into your washroom and cut the buds off into your washer, that's ideal, you know. But obviously, that's not something that we can do. Um, and honestly, you probably want to freeze the material a little bit before prior to it,
Right.
anyways. But cutting it off the plant, getting into I generally recommend, because I wash material so quickly, getting a very large garbage bag, nice thick heavy duty garbage bag, bucking it, cutting it off the stem into that garbage bag, putting that garbage bag into the freezer, allowing it to freeze for at least 24 hours. About 24 is right what I recommend. And then go ahead and introduce it to your wash machine. um Obviously, there's variables there. If are you using a 5 gallon wash machine? Are you using 3 5 gallon wash machines? Are you using a 30 gallon wash machine? What are you using for a wash machine? In i.e., how big is your garbage bag that you just filled up?
Of
I
course.
mean, if you filled it up to the max and you're walking in there with a great big garbage bag, trying to dump it into a 5 gallon machine, you're probably going to be dumping material all over, and you're going to be kind of mashing the bag up underneath trying to get it to dump out. So maybe you want to use some smaller bags if you're using some smaller washing machines. You start thinking about these different things, these different variables that you can change. And I actually want to go back and watch my video again. Didn't do it live, or maybe pre-recorded, whatever, to where I can talk over the video and go back over some of the things, because there's so many variables that can be introduced that can change the entire process. And you can manipulate your own SOPs to get around them, but you just got to be aware of them.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And there's definitely a lot of ways to go about it. And I think that's the thing is handling and stuff. I went and picked up a freezer. Just it sits right beside my grow room and it's, in the bag into the freezer and that's
Yep,
it, right? And
you
I
have
think
to.
that's really been the game changers for me. So I guess what about multiple screens? You feel that if you've got a dirtier product, you want to run it through multiple bags, multiple screens. Does it work to just, the 220, the 160, what you get there? Oh, there's a computer shutting down.
Preference.
Yeah,
Preference, for the most part, and in what you're looking for in an end product. Um, for me, at home, I'll generally run a 220, a 160, 73. Sometimes I'll throw the 90 and the 120 in there, but it depends on if I'm trying to run a competition or something.
sure,
Because
sure.
if it's
Yeah.
just rosin for myself, so to speak, the 73 to 159 is primo product as far as I'm concerned. Like I said, now if I'm going to try to enter a competition, then I'm going to start doing a little more nitpicking, to make sure that I get an extra premium product. But as far as I'm concerned, 220, 160, 73, 45. The 25 is where it starts to get controversial as to whether or not you want to include your 25. Even Frenchie, we had this conversation. I remember him talking about it, and into where it starts starts to be a pain in the ass, in that it gets clogged super easily. So when draining, especially when draining multiple machines through 5 gallon bags, like at my last cold room, I was running 3 5 gallon machines through 5 gallon wash bags. So you have to keep the material running, or the water running through there. So at a certain point in time, I just realized that I just came to the conclusion that I'm not getting enough material out of the 25 bag, to call it worth it. And I certainly wasn't getting any quality material out of the 25 bag to call it worth it. So the 25 just ended up going down the drain for me.
Yeah,
So
I
I
could
just,
feel that.
yep. So
It's
I just did the 220, 160, 73, 45.
nice, nice. So competition, then you're dialing in that sweet spot. What are you doing, like 73 to 120?
Yeah, I mean, I'm essentially going to throw in, shout out Rosin Evolutions, the bags I've been using since the beginning. I
Yes,
mean, I might have been using bubble bag due to one point in time, but essentially since the beginning of this, Rosin Evolution, and that's who I always recommend. But
100%.
I'm gonna start throwing in all the bags. I'm gonna because I've had what I call a fat head critical cush here a couple of years ago now, where the 160 bag absolutely dumped fucking big heads into the 160 bag, and I pressed the 160 and called it my fat head critical cush.
Oh,
But I wish I'd have thrown the 190 bag in and cleaned it up a little better. Because of course I cleaned it with the 220, but I didn't get the chance to throw the 190 in to clean it. And I wasn't smart enough to know that you can potentially throw it back through and blah 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 blah. Whole other conversation.
always
Um
learning, right? Always learning.
yeah, right. So you can throw in the 190. Obviously you still have the 160. You can throw in your 120, your 90, your 73, your 45. I believe Rosin Evolution actually came out with another bag recently, and I can't recall what size it or what micron it was, but I believe they
Interesting.
just
Like bigger than 220 or
I know it was in the middle somewhere,
okay,
and I don't
okay.
remember where the hell it was. So I might be mistaken, but I think I recall them coming out with another bag. Um, Maybe somebody in chat will talk to us or leave a
Yeah.
comment and tell us about it later, right? Um, and then essentially what I'm gonna do is dry it all separately, and then you need to start scoping it. You might even at that point in time run a static tech through it, especially because you're probably going to be running with a little bit smaller material or smaller quantity of material if you're, running through a competition, generally speaking, I guess. Um, Obviously not always, but you can run it through a little bit of a static tech to try to clean it up a little bit more if you want to. But essentially what you're going to be looking for is then, you know, are my biggest, juiciest, uh, most heads versus stocks. Is it falling in the 160 bag? Is it falling in the 120? Is it falling in the 90? Is it falling in the 73? You can make that distinction there. You can even press them first differently if you want to.
Right.
You know, you can go through and put all the fucking bags in there, run it through all separately, bag it all separately, press it all separately, the whole 9 yards, take out all your information, and then at the end, throw it all together. It doesn't matter, because what you just did is you gathered all of this fucking information. You still came down to the same product at the end. Yes, you put through a little extra work, but you have all of this information now, you
Sure.
know?
Yeah. So then we get into talking about the dry. Okay. Hey, freeze dryer. Freeze dryers are amazing, right? Super
Yeah.
cool technology. Hella expensive. I mean,
Yeah,
let's
there.
face it, you can build a pretty freaking amazing grow space for the same cost as a freeze dryer. So drying without. Tips, tricks, any thoughts around that? I mean, if you're doing it your first couple times, microplaning, sieving, what do you think?
Number one, I don't like it. I don't recommend it. Just myself. Now, there's people out there. There's people out there. I can start thinking of people that are already, if they were to see this, they'd start yelling at me. Um, It can be done. It absolutely can be done. I'm not that guy. I've never been a guy to stop at hash. I guess when I first washed it back in, I think the first time I washed was in 1999. Um, when I first washed back then, I didn't care. I was putting it on top of a bowl and smoking it anyways, right?
Fair.
But as far as I'm concerned, I just don't want to stop at hash. I always want to go that one step further, clean it down to the rosin. I have asthma and it just tends to smoke a little bit better. Man, sometimes when I see this, like Piatella though, and I mean specifically Piatella, I do get a little bit jealous, man. I definitely love to have a jar just stashed around, just because. But I'm not that guy. I'm not the air dry guy.
Yeah.
I'm not the gonna stop at hash guy. I'm not gonna be the microplane guy. That's just never been me. So I was thinking about this earlier. Like I was like, I hope he doesn't jump into this because I just don't really have much to add to it. In that, yeah, I don't do it much, so I don't have a hell of a lot to add about
So
it.
for you, it's always going to be take it to that next step, rosin it.
Yeah, if I can, I guess if there ever comes a point in which I can't, right, for whatever reason, um, you run it down to hash, and then you're going to, at that point in time, you can freeze it into pucks. You can microplane it, but you're from the freezing to the microplaning, obviously you're going to have a lot of handling of the material. So you have to start thinking about the material getting very sticky, so where you can work in a cold room, work with cold tools, to mitigate the sticking of the hash to
Oh, yeah.
the tools, if you will. Um, so then microplane it down to a ridiculously spread out, um, more spread out really than you think it needs to be. So the amount of space that you need to do the air drying of hash is more than most people think it needs to be. And then the drying conditions itself, obviously no light, but the drying conditions itself then become the variables. Do you want it to be in 60-60? Do you want to drop the temperature down to 50 and keep the humidity at 60? Do you want to, there's a lot of playing with variables that you can do at that point in time. And I think that's probably where a lot of the skill comes in, is knowing the conditions in which to dry in to make sure that you're microplaning to sufficiently, I should say, and to then stop fucking drying when it's done.
The
You know,
challenge. Yeah,
it
I
is,
mean,
dude, and
shout out
that's the
to,
art.
Jen Doe there. I mean, she's the one really throwing out a
That's
lot of this
that's who I was thinking
amazing
about. Who was
dry
gonna
stuff.
bit
Yeah.
who was gonna bitch at me for saying that was
Yeah.
the first person I thought it was
Yeah.
Jen.
I mean, I'm on team air dry because I can't afford a freeze dryer yet. So as soon as I can get one, I'll probably get one and start doing that. But
I would highly recommend it if you can.
yeah.
I would highly recommend it.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
Changes the game, dude.
Oh man, yes.
All of
So
a sudden, the first time
taking
you
it
go in there
up,
and
it's nice.
press,
Oh, it's ready to go.
the first time you go in and press, you're like, fuck, this is what I've been missing. Like, son of a bitch, the
Oh, I
missing
believe it.
puzzle piece, missing
Yeah.
puzzle piece.
Okay, so then rosin. Rosin doesn't always necessarily need to be the last step. What about taking a step further? Jams and diamonds and all this other stuff that people are doing. I've seen some pretty cool stuff lately.
Yeah, I've seen some pretty heady hype stuff lately as well. Um, and to me, I mean,
Is
that's
it
kind
hype?
of all. Yes and no. To me, yes, because you're just in most of the post processing, you're going to be adding heat for the most part.
Agreed.
Um, and that's a degradation immediately. You're not now. So is curing, right? So it's cold curing. It's a degradation of the product. It's a natural degradation of the product. Um, um, so there's arguments back and forth, but as far as I'm concerned, I'm not interested in it myself. And this is where I've gotten into problems, if you will, in the commercial market, in that I don't like fucking vapes. So I don't promote the vapes, right?
Okay.
And
Fair.
and at first I was kind of a little pissed off when they took my beautiful rosin and fucking stuck it in the oven and turned it into vapes, you know? Same thing with jams. I was kind of fucking pissed off. I got this gorgeous, fucking beautiful blonde, wet fucking rosin, and you're gonna stick it in a goddamn oven and turn it into this fucking jam. And same thing with the heat pressure assisted jams slash diamonds. I made up a big fucking word there, didn't I? And which is essentially where they're via heat and pressure separating the THCA from the terpenes, manipulating the terpenes into a
Yep.
diamond like structure, big chunk basically, and then reintroducing the terpenes back into that. And that's what I get at, is like, that's the biggest definition of hype. So all I'm doing is changing the consistency, maybe changing the chemical compounds a little bit. That's arguable, right? But you're changing the consistency, you're putting it back together, and you're smoking it. What did we do?
So then I'm seeing guys out there, centrifuges. Take your rosin, throw it into a bag, spin the terps out, take your THCA, which I think you meant to say.
Did I say
Melt that
THC?
down. Yeah, you did. It's fine. Melt that down into your distillate effectively, then add the terpenes back in. So it's removing that heat part of the process that, well, the THCA melt. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, it's a
you
different
still got
spin
to,
on things,
yeah,
right?
you still got to do, and I mean, there's other processes as well where you can, and I'm not going to get into details on this yet because I'm still personally playing with this. And I think Low Temp actually put out a video about it about a year ago. So I'm not too worried about it. But collecting slash harvesting your terpenes from your ice in your freeze dryer.
Right. I remember seeing that. Yeah, yeah. Pulling the charts back out. Interesting. Reintroduce that back into the system. Yes.
But here and again, so now what am I going to use? I'm going to use obviously I'm not going to use premium product for that because I've already got premium product right now. Now, if I have dry premium product, I've got a premium, very good tasting, great rosin, but it's fucking dry, you know, a couple of drops per whatever, obviously there's a ratio there.
Right.
Can very potentially rehydrate your material, but if you're talking about using THCA and reintroducing terpenes that are harvested from spent freeze dryer ice, um, you're generally not going to be using if we're talking THCA, you're not going to be using. I guess I can't say that. My brain is rolling as we're talking here.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting process because it's it's getting that cart, that vape. Like I'll be honest, I think the vape has a place for convenience. For I'm sitting in my basement here and I want to have a hit, and my daughter's bedroom's right there, and I don't want the basement to smell like anything, because I'm too lazy to go outside. Maybe, I'm at the job site or something, but it's certainly not pure. I mean, they're the wine coolers of weed. Let's face it, right? That's what they are.
Right,
They're
right.
fucking wine coolers, right?
Mhm.
But even wine cooler has its place. So.
I would agree. I would agree. And that's where I started. That's where I turned into the commercial market when we started talking about vapes and we started talking about all these different. There's people that prefer different things for different reasons. There's
Right.
all different walks of life. There's all different people medicating in different ways, different places.
Convenience, approachability. Yeah, no,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely.
So I started realizing that some of these things were more necessary. So even when I start talking about jams or stuff like that, I try not to take such a hard fucking stance on it anymore because there's a kind of a place for everything ish, even if it is that fucking heady sesh where there's only 10 people in the fucking room, I guess that's still a place, right?
So, I mean, when we talk about other methods of processing, I mean, you touched on it, cold cure. I prefer the cold cure for rosin. And I like the long age temple ball, at least 4 months, 6 months, that sort of thing. Um, that's,
You're asking me what I prefer.
yeah, like, how do you like to go about the cure? Because, I mean, obviously you can't do fresh press all the time. I mean, I guess you could, but it'd be a big session. Oh, did I lose you?
Yep, we lost each other there for a second.
Oh, okay. No, all good.
As long of a cold cure as possible. So just an unagitated, left in the back of the refrigerator, no light, cold cure is what I would prefer. Obviously sometimes we don't have the time for that, so I might leave it in a dark corner, in your shelf, in the corner of your closet or something. But a cold,
We are experiencing some technical difficulties here.
sir.
Oh, there we go.
All right.
So you're coming back about on a cold cure?
So yeah, cold cure all day long. Um, long cold cure. Um, where was I going with that? Um,
Curing those
obviously,
flaky eggs.
obviously, you can speed it up if you want to a little bit, but when it comes down to the jams or the fresh press specifically, I'm not a fan. I'm
Yeah.
just not a fan. Fresh press is a pain in the ass to deal with. Um, it's generally a little bit harsher, a little more tickly on the throat. And it's going to turn into fucking cold cure eventually, anyways, for most people, because most people don't know how to store and handle and and store fucking cold cure or
Yeah.
or fresh press, and it's gonna turn into cold cure by day three anyway. So what do you fuck? What's the fucking matter? Why'd you pay an extra $20 for fresh press?
Exactly. Exactly that. No, no, know what you're getting, know what your gear is. All right. Well, Pedro, we've been chatting for a bit. We're having a little bit of technical difficulties on the back end. So I will kind of wrap this up and somebody getting into rosin, getting into hash, getting into washing the first time, and they're on a budget, where should they focus?
Um, I think the first thing I always recommend is a cold room,
Yeah.
and that doesn't have to be a cold room. I was talking just my last consultation I was doing. You can use a 4x4 tent, a portable air conditioner, a bunch of blankets, and get shit done. You know what I'm saying? Like you can make shit happen, you know, but growing good material and keeping it fucking cold throughout the process of post-process solventless processing, those are key components. Without those things, it's gonna be trash.
100%. I couldn't agree more. And for me, just when I really started focusing on the main things that you're talking about, cold, less handling, dealing with contamination, less ice, if any, my products started coming out on top, man. So seeing
Absolutely.
what you guys are doing, leading the charge and stuff, well, much love, man. Much respect.
I appreciate it, man. It's
Oh, there we go. We're losing you again. So I'll wrap her up here. I'm going to say if you're not following Pedro on Instagram, we're going to drop his link down below there. Pedro, thanks for stopping by the Hash Files, man. Banger of an episode. Really appreciate you, man.
I appreciate you, man. I'm sorry we had some freaking tech.
There we go again. Okay. Well, we're going to blame the internet gods for this one. I am Matt. This is Photosynthetic. That's Pedro, although he's slightly frozen. Oh, he's back.
Hey,
And we're
be
out.
good, everybody.
Cheers.